As we all probably know, stats really don't matter a whole ton when we're talking about roller coasters. They can certainly help out a ride, but you definitely don't need to have good stats to be a good ride. All you have to do is take one look at Coaster at Peony Playland to realize that. 68 feet tall, yet it's touted as one of the best wooden coasters, or even just coasters on the planet. Stats can be extremely misleading. That, however, does not mean that stats aren't interesting, and if you're like me and don't have a life, you could spend all day going through RCDB looking at coasters and their stats. And sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes those stats will jump out at you, maybe because of a past perception that you had that the stats don't seem to back up. So today we will be looking at some of the most surprising coaster stats that can be found on the roller coaster database. And to start off the video, we will be looking at surprising coaster heights, whether that be the height of the lift hill, height of the drop, or maybe even height of something like the height of an element. First, we have American Eagle, in my opinion an airtime machine, but I know that's an unpopular opinion. So some people might be surprised that it stands a staggering 147 feet tall. Standing in front of that structure in person, it's completely massive, and the height is even more impressive when you consider it was not only built in 1981, but it was also the first non-kiddie coaster ever built by Intamin. Man, they rarely seem to start small. Next, we have a coaster from RCCA, the company known for their absolutely monumental huge woodies like Son of Beast and the original Rattler. With those under their belt and also their reputation, it might come as a surprise that Bandit at Movie Park Germany actually stands just 91 feet tall. Now don't get me wrong, that's still an alright height for a woody, but you might just expect a little bit more. Big Apple Coaster, on the other hand, actually has monstrous stats, but it's overshadowed by its poor reputation. But it's actually 203 feet tall. Not a traditional one, but it is technically a hyper. Something else that's very surprisingly a hyper is Bullet Coaster, the SNS air launch coaster similar to Hypersonic XLC that is located at Happy Valley Shenzhen in China. It features a 221 foot drop, and for reference that's 91 feet taller than Hypersonic's drop. Now we have Cobra, the interesting PAX creation that doesn't look to be really a stat stuff, or at least from videos, but actually manages to reach a max height of 137 feet. Now we come to a ride that's actually shorter than you might expect, the 55 foot tall Cornball Express. This less than intimidating height is however quickly made up for by the abundance of airtime that people love to rave about. iSpeed, 180 feet tall. Now the reason why I think some of us might find this surprising is because most people haven't actually gotten out to Mirabilandia or Coruscant where its clone is, and when you look at it on camera it takes at such a speed that it doesn't look that tall, when in reality it's the same height as a ride like Hokage that's known for its monstrous size. Jackrabbit at Kennywood, 40 feet tall. I knew that it was a terrain coaster, but it's kind of astonishing how much it relies on that terrain to create some of those amazing elements. Millennium, the Vekoma MK1200 at Fantasy Island, 150 feet tall. MK1200s are not known at all for their stature, but this is one of the new ones and it really gets up there. Montezuma's Revenge, 148 feet tall. This was actually the tallest roller coaster in the world when it opened back in 1978, but it's never really thought of like that, mainly because it gives no time for the rider to take in that max height. Mr. Freeze Reverse Blast, 218 feet tall. I guess when you think about it, this one makes sense because they have those vertical spikes that you never seem to get all the way up, so they usually do nothing but enhance the height. Nemesis, 104 foot drop. This speaks to how much Nemesis uses the terrain. Despite being just 42.6 feet tall, it still manages to have a decently tall drop. Now where exactly on the ride this drop is, I have no clue, but RCDB says it's there. Now we have another coaster from Alton Towers, and that's Oblivion with its 180 foot drop. I always heard about Oblivion as, oh, it's one of the smaller B&M dive coasters, but when you're just looking at height, it's towards the top. I guess maybe it just seems like a smaller ride because after that drop, the layout doesn't really do anything. Outlaw Run, 107 feet tall. Once again, this height statistic might at first jump out as surprising to you. It's actually one of the shorter RMCs, but it makes sense when you think about it because of how much it relies on the terrain. Patriot, Worlds of Fun, 160 feet tall. People trash on it for being boring and one of the lower tier B&M inverts, but it's actually one of the taller ones. And I have to say that I haven't ridden it yet, but it looks like actually one of the better inverts to me because of how it doesn't follow that cookie cutter invert layout. Shambhala, 255.9 foot drop. Well, I knew that was one of the best B&M hypers, but sheesh, they could have almost gone for a giga, but I guess I shouldn't complain about a 255 foot tall B&M hyper. Shivering Timbers, 122 feet tall. Man, you always hear from people that have been to Michigan's Adventure just how absolutely colossal Shivering Timbers is, but I suspect that maybe that's just because of the lack of other vertical presences in the park. 122 feet tall is pretty good for a wind coaster, but it's really nothing out of this world. Silver Bullet, Knott's, 146 feet tall. People always complain about how mediocre the drop on Silver Bullet is, but it really has nothing to do with the height. 146 feet tall is pretty good, especially for a B&M looping coaster. The problem really just comes down to the angle of descent, although I think it's understandable considering the limitations Knott's had in this construction of Silver Bullet. And now the last surprising height statistic, Wicked Twister, 215 feet tall. This I think is another case like Mr. Freeze and Superman Escape from Krypton where it doesn't quite reach that max height, making the structure seem a lot shorter than it is. It also doesn't help that it's at Cedar Point where being 215 feet tall is really nothing special. Really speaks to how incredible the park is. Sorry, I had to get some of my Cedar Point fanboy in me out. So that's about all we have for height statistics, and if you watched my 10 bad coasters that I actually enjoy, you might know what time it is. Halftime trivia, yay! If you guys missed that or don't remember how this is going to work, I will ask a question. The first 3 people to correctly respond in the comments will receive a shout out in my next major video. Today the question is more of a task, and it is to name 3 numerical stats about K1ngda Ka, meaning a statistic that has to do with numbers like track length, maybe the speed, or maybe even something interesting like the train capacity. Again, just answer in the comments for a chance at a shout out. And now with that done, let's move on to track length statistics. And always remember guys, length doesn't matter. First up, Abysses, the Vekoma launch coaster being built at Energylandia, 4,318 feet of track. If you weren't aware, most extreme launch coasters tend to be around 2,000 to 3,000 feet long, but Abysses just combines so many elements that's actually around double that. Adrenaline Peak at Oaks Park and Hydras at Casino Pier, 1,050 feet long. These are a pair of cloned Eurofighters, and I know that they aren't really known for their long ride durations, quite the opposite actually, but still, 1,050 feet long is kinda pathetic, but I will say that it looks not really matter a whole lot because all the elements seem to pack a punch. Big Apple Coaster, 4,777 feet. Now I'm not necessarily going to say this is a good or bad thing, but I can say that it's a long ride. Although to be honest, I'd probably like it because I like every bad coaster I ride it seems. Except of course Firebird. Dino-Conda, 3,445 feet long. Now for the average roller coaster, this would be pretty decent length, but Dino-Conda is no average ride. It's an absolute monster that completely flies through the course, so I'm surprised I've never once heard anyone nitpick about the length, but that's probably a good thing because it's literally Dino-Conda. I don't think any complaints are necessary. Gold Rush at Tracti Park Flaharty, 1,312 feet long. No one's really labeling it as a long ride, but I find it kind of surprising that's this short. K1ngda Ka, 3,118 feet long. Now I haven't been to Great Adventure, planning to go there soon by the way though, but I have been to Cedar Point, home to Top Thrill Dragster, the sister coaster of K1ngda Ka. And I will say that in person, it's astonishing how long the launch track of Dragster stretches. But still, it's insane to me that K1ngda Ka has just 82 feet less of track than the next coaster that we're going to talk about, Phantom's Revenge at Kennywood, that has 3,200 feet of track. When you just look at track length statistics, it's kind of surprising how people trash on Ka for being an extremely short ride, when it's a launch coaster which are usually pretty short rides. Then you have Phantom, which occupies a spot in many people's top 25 coasters in the world, and it's a hypercoaster which are supposed to be long rides, but it only has 82 more feet of track than K1ngda Ka. But I guess that things line up a lot more when you look at the actual ride duration in which Phantom destroys Ka. Next we have Intamin and Megalites, coasters that are considered world class by many including me and never seem to get complaints about being short, but if you look at stats they're 2,477 feet long. There's 0 Tivolis that top that. Now let's balance that out with something positive, something that exceeds expectations, so Python and Bamboo Forest has 5,111 feet of track. Look, I understand that everyone knows that it's a long ride, but this is just insane. It's almost twice as long as the average GCI. Shockwave Drayton Manor, 1,640 feet long. I find it quite interesting how you can have a complete circuit coaster with 4 inversions and fit in that little amount of track. Intamin, that is something impressive. Next, the second to last coaster in the video, Twister 2 at Lich Gardens, 4,460 feet of track. Again, not sure whether this is a good or bad thing because I haven't really ever heard from someone that really likes this ride, but that length stat is there. And now, to round out part 1, we have undisputedly the greatest roller coaster to ever grace the earth, even though you guys probably aren't going to understand that reference, Wild One at Six Flags America, 4,000 feet long. You know, I never really thought about it, but now that I do, yeah, Wild One is an extremely long ride, especially when you look at the seemingly endless second stretch of Airtime Hills. So that's about gonna wrap up this video. Thank you guys for watching. Remember, leave your suggestions, thoughts, and video ideas in the comments below, and I'll catch you guys later. See ya.